with graphical representation of motion. कोई भी जो क्वांटिटी होती है बेटे उसको सबसे इजीली हम रिप्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं with the help of graphs. Similarly, motion can also be described with the help of certain graphs. The first among those graphs is the easiest one, that is called as the distance time graph. इसमें जो सबसे पहला केस हम लोग आज डिस्कस करेंगे कि अगर कोई बॉडी रेस्ट पर है मतलब इट इज नॉट मूविंग, इट्स पोजीशन इज नॉट चेंजिंग विद रेफरेंस टू टाइम के साथ साथ उसकी पोजीशन नहीं बदल रही है. हमने एक्स एक्सिस पर रिप्रेजेंट किया टाइम को विच इज इन सेकंड्स, वाई एक्सिस पर रिप्रेजेंट किया हमने डिस्टेंस को विच इज इन मीटर्स. जब आपने उस बॉडी को देखा, सपोज जब आपने उसको ऑब्जर्व किया तो वो आपके रेफरेंस पॉइंट से सपोज 3 मीटर के डिस्टेंस पे थी. 1 सेकंड के बाद भी वो 3 मीटर के डिस्टेंस पे है, 2 सेकंड के बाद भी वो 3 मीटर के डिस्टेंस पे है, 3 सेकंड के बाद भी वो 3 मीटर के डिस्टेंस पे है. मीन्स द बॉडी इज नॉट मूविंग. उसका रेफरेंस पॉइंट के कंपैरिजन में डिस्टेंस चेंज नहीं हो रहा है. तो अगर कोई बॉडी रेस्ट पर है तो इट विल बी रिप्रेजेंटेड बाय अ ग्राफ विच विल बी पैरेलल टू द टाइम एक्सिस. व्हेन अ बॉडी इज observing uniform motion, then the distance time graph, it will be represented like this. Means the body is covering equal distance in equal interval of time. Suppose in 1 second it is covering 1 meter, then in another 1 second it will again be covering only 1 meter. This particular thing is called as distance time graph for uniform motion. Slope of this distance time graph, it gives you speed or velocity. The second case is the distance time graph for non-uniform motion. Non-uniform motion, it can represent increasing acceleration or negative acceleration, that is deceleration. The first case is of positive acceleration, means when the velocity is increasing with time. In that particular case, the distance time graph will be represented by increasing slope like this one. In this case, suppose a car starts from 0 and speed regularly increases up to 6 meter per second. Then it is a case of positive acceleration. It will be represented like this. Now, the second case is of negative acceleration. Means suppose a car is moving with a uniform velocity and it all of a sudden applies brakes. Then its velocity will decrease with time. Means it will be covering less distance in equal interval of time. Now, in this particular case of uniform acceleration, it will be represented by a graph with declining slope. The next type of graphs, they are called as the velocity time graphs. The velocity time graphs on x-axis will represent time and on y-axis will represent velocity. The first case is of uniform motion. Uniform motion मतलब जब एक बॉडी यूनिफॉर्म वेलोसिटी के साथ मूव करती है. आपने जब उस बॉडी को ऑब्जर्व किया सपोज, तो उस टाइम पे वो 4 मीटर पर सेकंड की वेलोसिटी के साथ मूव कर रही थी. 1 सेकंड के बाद देखा तो भी वो 4 मीटर पर सेकंड के साथ मूव कर रही थी. 2 सेकंड के बाद देखा तो भी 4 मीटर पर सेकंड की वेलोसिटी से मूव कर रही थी. तो अगर आप इन लाइंस को ज्वाइन करते हैं, देन यू विल गेट ए लाइन पैरेलल टू द एक्स एक्सिस और पैरेलल टू द टाइम एक्सिस. This represents the movement of a body that is moving with uniform velocity or with uniform speed. The area under velocity time graph represents the displacement. Now, in case we substitute the velocity with speed, now it becomes a speed time graph. Now, the area under speed time graph, it will not represent displacement, rather it will represent the distance. The second one is the case of uniformly accelerated motion when a body starts from rest. Means the velocity of the body is increasing continuously with time. Means in equal interval of time there is equal rise in velocity. In such a case it will be a graph like this. Means with every interval of time the velocity is continuously rising. The second case is when there is uniformly accelerated motion, but when you start observing that object, it is already having some initial velocity. Suppose when you start observing a car, it was moving with a velocity of 3 meter per second. Then the uniformly accelerated motion will be represented like this. Now the next graph is when a body is initially moving with certain speed and the driver applies brake and it comes to halt, means it stops. It is the case of negative acceleration. Suppose you start observing a car at 0 seconds and it was moving at a velocity of 60 meter per second. The driver applies brakes and it comes to a halt or a stop in 6 seconds. Then it will be represented like this.